morning or good afternoon, wherever it is where you are. Welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks. Today, we are going to kind of continue along a path that we started last week with some sort of interesting implementation features that are available to you that you might not be aware of. And today we're going to talk about making universally callable sub-processes. Now, I have created a presentation for this, just as I did last week. And just as I did last week, it's not so much for you as it is for me, so that I don't forget anything as we go through this, because there are several moving pieces here that we have to think about when we talk about building callable sub-processes. But what we are going to do is we're going to take a portion of an approval process, and we're going to encapsulate it so that it can be called by any other process in the system. So I can build it one time, and then anywhere that I need it, anywhere else in the system, I can simply call it from any other process and just incorporate it into my process as a sub-process. So in order to do this, there are a couple of things that we need to discuss. First of all, let's talk about what the problem itself is. So there are some approvals that you go through based on your organization that are going to apply to many different processes. So for us today in this particular example, we're going to take a legal approval. Now, a lot of the stuff that you do in your organization doesn't require legal approval, but some things do. And in fact, depending on the industry you're in, right? So let's say you're in the life sciences industry. Any advertising that you put out, any papers that you might publish, any sort of public statements that get made, you really don't want to run afoul of the FDA because they can, ruin your life and business. So whenever you're doing advertising, or, and whether it's print or TV or whatever, when you're making public statements, and of course, if you're a publicly held company, you also have to worry about the Securities and Exchange Commission sticking their nose in because you've done something questionable. You want to avoid all that. So legal approval is a really good example of one of those things that you don't need for everything, but when you need it, you really do need it. And sure, you could encapsulate a legal approval process step or loop anywhere that you wanted to in a timeline. But every time you need legal approval, then you have to constantly reconfigure the same activities across 10 different timelines. And of course, if anything changes in your legal approval process, that would mean that you would have to go back to all of those timelines that include a legal approval process and potentially have to edit all of them. And of course, there may be effects on in-process, in-flight process timeline instances that might get a little messed up. It becomes a bit of a pain. When you have these types of processes, it's often best to set them aside as sub-processes that you can simply call from anywhere. So that would enable you, if you ever have to change that legal process, to change it at that one spot, and then it's changed for everything that calls it. And so having a more modular setup for commonly used approvals is actually a pretty good idea. And you can do that because all you have to do is make a callable sub-process that can be called from anywhere. Now, there's a couple of moving pieces that you need to make this work. Fortunately, they're not difficult moving pieces, but there are some things you need to think about, and you need to be kind of logical about the way that you go through it. So we're going to be using two important features, one of which we rarely talk about, but we are going to get into it today, which is field replication. So we're going to use field replication to transfer data from one form to another. Now, I should back up here and talk about how we're going to do this. There really are two ways to pull in a callable subprocess. We're going to go over the more formal way today, and we're going to build both our callable subprocess and a main process, and we're going to hook them together. Now, we're going to assume that to make this work, my legal approval process needs to have a separate form that is always used, that is standardized for the legal team. And what we need to do is get information from our request and post it over to the legal request form. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it this way. At the tail end of the webinar today, I'll show you a really quick and dirty way to do it. But I'm going to go across the formal way for most of the webinar because it illustrates these important features, especially field replication. We're also going to need to use the form actions activity, and we're going to need it because we're using field replication. I'll make that a lot more clearer when we get there. The thing about callable subprocesses is it does make your overall maintenance as a system administrator much easier, which is why you want to encapsulate it. Let's talk about field replication and what it is before we actually get into building, because we are going to build both things from scratch today, because I think we'll have time to do that. You can designate a form or a field on one form as a source field. That's generally a field that will be filled out by a user. And once a user fills that field out, you're going to want to use that value, perhaps as we are today, in multiple forms. Well, we're going to use it in at least one other form. What field replication does is it takes the value from that source field, and for every other form that exists inside the process, if all of those other forms have a field with the same name, then the value in that source field will automatically be replicated to every other form in the process. You don't have to use a copy form data and go through that extra step. You can just use field replication, and that value replication will happen automatically. Now, you should only ever set one field on one form as a field replication field. Every other form that has a field of that name will be a recipient field, and they will automatically receive the value. They require no additional configuration. All you have to do is click one checkbox on one field that you want to serve as your source field, and that value will replicate to every other form field with the same name on every other form that exists inside the process. So you have one field that is your replication field. All other fields read from that source. I've seen some people try to implement field replication, and what they'll do is they'll take the source field and they'll make it the replication field, and then they'll go to all their recipient fields and make them replication fields. Never do that, because now you're saying you have two fields, both of which have the same name, both of which you want replicated across every other form. At best, you are going to keep constantly overriding the data on all the other forms. You don't want to do that. You only want one single field marked as the replication field. Every other field has to be a recipient field. Set it up that way, and you've got one master field that you set the value in when your submitter submits the form or what have you, and then Every other form simply receives that value. Now, the other forms will save that value as the value for the field in those forms, so they're all fully queryable. It's not a case where I'm reading from the main form. I'm actually just taking the data, transferring it over to the recipient field, and saving that data in that form field in the secondary form. So because it is saved as an actual value in the form field in that form, it's fully queryable via knowledge views and everything else. So we're going to use that in two ways. We're going to do two things. We're going to set some fields on our main process form that are going to pass some required data over to our legal approval form. And then we're going to take, I think one field will be enough to show. We're going to take one field from our legal approval form, and we're going to make that a replication field. And we're going to pass that back to our parent form. So we're going to have two-way replication going, although it will be for different fields. The second is the form actions activity. Now, this is an activity type. We've talked about it quite a lot, and we are going to use that. Normally, when you use the form actions activity type, what you want to do is swap out the default form. And so you pick a form and you set it as the default form for a process. We're not actually going to do that this time, but we are going to add our legal form to our main form, primarily because what we want to do whenever we call the legal form is we want to just kick off the replication to transfer our data before we call our sub process. And we'll configure that, and we'll walk through that step by step. So we're going to have a main form. It's going to replicate some fields to our legal process form. Our legal team is going to use that legal process form to go through their part for legal approval. Once it's approved, that legal approval form is going to send some data back to our main form, and then our main process is just going to continue as normal once our legal approval is done. Now, because we are going to call the run or the process activity in our main timeline, both of our forms are going to get passed to our legal approval form. And of course, whatever changes are made there are going to get reflected back up in our main form too. So Process Director is largely going to take care of the behind the scenes organization for you without you having to worry a lot about how to make this work. It'll kind of just work for you automatically. Okay, so here's what we got to do. Now, this is where we get to the part that it's actually for me to give me the instructions I need to build this. Just because I wrote this doesn't mean I remember what I wrote. I have the memory of a goldfish. So this is where this whole presentation begins to help me and not you. So we're going to have to plan it out. In general, whenever you're going to do this, you need to identify what fields I'm going to need to send to my sub process. So what fields am I going to have to replicate from the main process that I want to show up in my sub process form? And also, I'm going to need to do the reverse, figure out what fields on my legal approval form in this particular example, what fields need to be passed back. So I have decided kind of arbitrarily that I'm going to pass the three standard fields: submitter, submission date, request number, and request info. And the request info is kind of the narrative of what we're going to be doing. And those are the fields I'm going to replicate on the main form. On the sub form or the legal process form, I just need the legal comments that need to be reflected back into the main form. So I am going to need 5 fields that are replicated, 4 on the main form, 1 on the legal process form, that will transfer the data from those 5 fields back and forth. I've also got an extra little step here for review type. There may be different types of legal review for contracts, for IP issues, and for federal and state government regulatory issues. So we're going to add that, and on our legal approval form, we're going to set up some conditional activities to go through to the correct person for each of these three types of legal reviews. Obviously, there may be more types. This is just a sample. So these are the things we have to get set up before we build. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our sub process first. So from our main process, and this kind of looks disconnected now, but from our main process, remember, as I said a few minutes ago, whenever we kick off the run process activity from our main process, which is how we're going to invoke the sub process, we are going to have both our main form and the legal approval form already part of our main process. Both of those forms will exist. So when our sub process starts, the first thing that we're going to want to do is do a set form so that we can set the legal approval form as the default form for the process. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing it this way and using the extra forms and making it a little more confusing is because what I think I want for my legal team is to have the same set of information before them every time. And so they're seeing the same form with the same structure and the same issues, all the same information from all of my sub processes. They get all the information they need on their legal request form. That's the request form that they're going to be used to using. Your other form, your main form, might have tons of other data that it's not necessary for the lawyers to look at, process data and maybe a bunch of attachments or whatever it may be that the lawyers don't need to see. Your process manager might need to see it, and the people who participate in the main process might need to see it. But the legal team probably has a specific issue that you're trying to have them sign off on. So it's best to give them their own form. Now, because we're giving them their own form, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set a set form data, or sorry, a form actions activity to set the appropriate form. Because remember, from the main form, I'm going to be calling the sub process. Both of the forms or the form instances that are attached to the main form will automatically get sent down to the legal review sub process. And because it has two forms, I got to tell it which form is the form I want it to use. So we're going to use the form action CT to set the legal approval form as the main form. Then we're going to go through our reviews, and I just have some notional reviews here. So we're going to have a paralegal look at it. We're going to go through our contracts, IP, and regulatory. So I'm going to build a couple of those, and then we're going to have our general counsel do the final sign off, and then that will end our process. So we're going to build our sub process first. The reason why we're building our sub process first, by the way, is so that I know what on my main process I need to send down to the sub process to make it work. So it's best if I have the sub process more or less set in stone before I start calling it from main processes. By the way, setting it up this way, we can also have the legal approval be used as a standalone process. Sure, we're setting it up so that it runs well as a sub process, but the cool thing about this is that the way that we are setting this up means that I will be able to run the legal process as a standalone sub process all by itself. And that means that I don't have to call it from a sub process. I have a separate legal review process that I can just use on an ad hoc basis to send over anything that the lawyers need. So with all of this in mind, and now that we have some sort of notional idea of how all this looks, let's start building it. Now, just so that you know, I have a callable sub process sample application, and it contains two generic processes, both of which call the legal approval process. So And by the way, the legal approval process is nothing major, but this is what we are going to build. And we're basically going to build this out like this. And we are going to do all of this stuff from scratch. So it may not be pretty, but it it should work just fine, even though it won't be pretty. This is the prettier version of it. So it has all the fields with the proper formatting and it all looks kind of pretty for us. So I am not going to build pretty stuff. I'm going to build fast stuff. But the important thing to remember here is that we have the appropriate fields so that we can pass this data back and forth. So with that in mind, I thought I had pinned the content list open here, but apparently I hadn't. We'll go into our webinar and we'll go to formal here because this is what we're building. And I've already got the folders for my legal process and my main process. So we're going to go into the legal folder here and we are going to build it. So let's go ahead and create a new form definition. And we're going to call this the legal approval form. Legal approval form? Well, I was close. And so we have a couple of fields that we know we're going to need. We're going to need our standard 3 fields. So let's go ahead and create those. So again, it's not going to be pretty and I'm not going to make it accessible by using labels and doing all of that stuff. We're just going to do this quickly so that we're sure that we can do all of this in the time allotted for us. So there's our submitter. We're going to have a user picker and we're going to call the user picker submitter. And we aren't going to be editing it here on this particular form, so we can go ahead and if we want to, I'm not going to go through all of this for all of the fields, but if we want to, we could probably just go ahead and disable this field. In fact, for all the standard fields, for the 4 standard fields that we're going to send, we could probably just disable them so that our attorneys can read them, but not edit them. And really, there's no reason for them to edit the original data. I'm not going to go through all that other than to, talk about why I'm not going to go through all that, but we're just going to go ahead and keep in mind that what I would normally do is disable all of these standard fields. So I need the submitter and then I need the submit date. And there we'll use a date time picker that we are going to call submit date. And then I need the, was it request number? See, this is why I have this. So it is a request number. Okay, great. So we'll need a request number. And I'm going to just use a sequence number. And I'm going to do something that I would never do in a real application. I am going to have my request number. And when I create my main form, I am just going to use a quick and dirty sequence number to pass the request, to create a request number when I open the form. And that's going to pass just that generic sequence number back over here. Normally, I wouldn't do it that way because I would want to have a running process timeline instance before I created the sequence number, but we're going to do it from the form just for simplicity's sake today. And I need my request info. Uh-oh, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go, request info. And we'll throw in a text box called request info. And these names are super important, as we'll see in a moment. Also, this is going to be kind of a narrative field, so I'm going to set the columns to 40, and I'll set the rows to 5 to make it like a multi-line text box. Okay, those are the four pieces of information that I'm going to send into this form. Actually, now that I think about it, I may have five pieces of info I need to send into that form because I've got these review type checkboxes. So we're going to have to set that up too. So we'll ask for our legal review type. Um, legal review type. Well, and I will drop in, oh, there we go, radio button list. So we'll call this review type. And I will add contracts, IP, and regulatory. So contracts, and we'll call that C, legal, and we'll call that L, and regulatory, and we'll call that R. So we'll see contracts, legal, and regulatory, and we'll save C, L, and R. Legal might be a little too broad a category, but who cares? Nobody's grading me on my legal acumen today. So we're going to add that in as our fifth field. And finally, we're going to add the field that needs to be sent back to our main form. And here's where we'll begin to use replication. So we're going to call this legal comments, and we'll drop a text box in. We'll call it legal comments. And once again, we'll say 40 and 5 because it's kind of a narrative thing. So now I've got legal comments. And then at the bottom, I'd put in my standard stuff, right? You'd put in a button area, and below your button area, we can go ahead and we can put in what do you call it? A routing slip. That's what you call it. And we'll drop in a routing slip control there. Now we do need to do one thing to our legal comments because now we are going to start implementing field replication. So on my field properties for this legal comments field, we are going to turn on synchronize field within process. This one field is now going to be our source field that is going to take our legal comments and replicate it off to every other form that exists in the process. Although in this case, it will be just one other form, but that's enough for us to see that it works. This is the only field that I'm going to be replicating back to my main form. These other five fields are going to be receiving data from my main form. Actually, you know what? The paralegal review, now that I'm thinking about it, the paralegal review is probably going to be what the paralegal is probably going to need to select this because they'll need to determine what type of legal review it needs. I don't think a non-legally trained person might know what the proper request type is. So we are not going to replicate the legal review field. We're going to let the paralegal figure that out and then decide where to send it. So that's our form. We'll go ahead and we'll save and close it. And now we need to build our timeline quickly. So as soon as it saves, there we go. We can hit OK, and we can start working on our process timeline. So we'll create a new process timeline, and we will call this the legal approval TL. And we'll turn it on here, and we're going to do a couple of things. Now, I'm not going to do anything with the email templates in the interest of time. I probably should. we'll look at the clock and we'll see how we're doing on time before I take the extra time to make that. But for now, we're just going to go to our form for timeline, and we're going to set that to our legal approval form. And let's just update it since we've done that. Great. Now we can close out the options here, and we can start creating some activity. So we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I am just going to make all of these. Well, actually, I'm not going to make all of these dependent. I also need more activities. So we'll add them down here. We better just go through them one step at a time, what we're going to do here. The very first thing that we are going to do in our process timeline is we are going to set the main form. Now, we've already set the legal approval form as the form for the timeline. So if we run this timeline de novo, it will automatically take a new copy of the legal approval form, and it's going to attach it to our timeline as the default form for the timeline. That's great. However, what we're going to be doing is calling this from a parent process using the run process CT, and we're going to be passing it 2 forms. And one of those forms is already marked as the default form, and that is our main request form. Well, we don't want that to actually happen whenever we're calling this. So what we're going to do for our very first activity is we are just going to do a form actions activity. And for our form option, we're going to set our legal approval form as the default form. Now, that means that when we get this process instance called from the run process custom task on our main process timeline, the first thing that's going to happen, it's going to look at these 2 forms. So it's going to have a request form and a legal approval form already. And the main form has already been marked as the default for the main process. We don't want that to happen here. So we want to be sure that we explicitly call the legal approval form and set that as the default form instance for the timeline. Now, the add new form instance property is important here because we only want to add the legal approval form if the form does not already exist in the package. So what we're saying is, if I've already got a copy of the legal approval form, don't make a new instance. We're going to keep that existing copy. And that's the copy that we're going to set as the default form for this timeline. Because we can start this timeline de novo without having to call it from some other process, we can just generically call this and, put an attachment there and say, hey, read through this document and be sure it's legally cool. And we can just do a standalone legal approval process from it. This is kind of unnecessary because if we're going to do a standalone legal process, we've already specified, can I move this? No, I can't move this. So let me close it. We've already specified that our legal approval form is the form for timeline. So when we open this timeline instance on its own, or if we were to open the legal approval form on its own and submit it, it would already be attached anyway. There wouldn't be any other forms. And so in that case, this activity number 1, which we should probably name as set legal form as default, this won't matter because it'll already exist in the process timeline if we start it as its own thing. And so it'll just automatically create that form. It'll automatically set it as the default form. So it will get to this activity in that particular case, and it will do nothing. But when we're calling it from a parent process, it will actually be there so that we can ensure that our legal approval form and the existing legal approval form is the only instance of the legal approval form that exists in this timeline package for the instance, and it will be set as the default. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're running out of room there at the bottom, so let's close our options section. Second thing we're going to do is now we're going to send this to the paralegal. And the paralegal, then we'll call this paralegal check. Sooner or later, we'll call it the paralegal check. This will be a user activity. It will have its own participants, generally a paralegal, and they'll have their own results. Again, I'm not going to waste the time adding results. We'll just accept the default because we're just going to run through this quickly. And the actual working of the process is not really as important to us as seeing how the linkage works between the main and parent process. So this is our paralegal. Our paralegal is going to do the check. This is the point at which the paralegal will decide what kind of legal review we're going to do. I probably should encapsulate this in an approval loop. I didn't, and it's too late. I have to ask your forgiveness. I should have, but I didn't. So let's assume that we've created the appropriate approval loop, and everything from paralegal check down is inside an approval loop. Again, we're not going to go through the actual details of how this works, so we're just going to kind of do this quick and dirty. Now, the paralegal will determine whether this is a contracts, legal, or regulatory review that is needed. So my next three activities are going to be conditional activities for those reviews. So all of them are going to be dependent on the paralegal review completing. They'll all run in parallel, except they won't run in parallel because only one of these activities will ever run. So we will have our regulatory review, and we will say this is needed when, and we'll say the review type equals R. And then we will set the second one to legal review. And we will set, legal review. And we will set its condition when review type equals L. And then we have our third type of review, contracts. So we will call this contract review. And we will set its needed when the review type equals C. And we'll close that. So basically, I have these three activities. Only one of these activities will ever run, depending on what the paralegal decides whenever they look at the initial request and decide how to route it. So all three of these activities, though they technically are set up to run in parallel, only one of these will ever run. However, because I have these three activities here, and because I didn't place them inside a parent activity, I'm going to have to do something a little trickier here with activity number 6. I'm going to have to set the dependency on all three of these activities since I don't know which one is ever going to run. I could have made this easier. I could have, before I got to this regulatory, legal, and contract review, I could have just made a parent activity called review selection or whatever, and I would encapsulate these three activities inside there. If I did that, then I could make activity 6 dependent on the parent. But because we're kind of cowboying our way through this, we're going to have to make activity 6 dependent on all 3 of these activities. So whichever one runs, the other 2 will be marked as not needed and they'll complete automatically. And then whatever type of legal review runs, and then when it completes, all 3 activities will be complete, and we can run activity 6, which is our general counsel sign off. And so I am on this one, this will always run, but I do need to run over here to the Start tab, and I need to add 3 dependencies on it. So it needs to be done regulatory review, legal review, and contract review. All 3 need to be complete before this activity runs. And all right, there we go. Now I've got my general counsel sign off, and that will be the last thing that happens. So our path on this is it gets called by a parent process. We set the legal form as our default form. The paralegal checks it, figures out what kind of review it needs. That particular review type of the 3 choices available will run, and then the general counsel will sign off, and then our process is complete. I have already checked this to set that it's set up for the legal approval form, so we are cool for that. Oh, I am going to do one thing. I am going to make my life a little easier post-webinar by going to the notifications tab and turning that off. So we are going to, so I'm not going to, especially since I'm not even using an email template here, there's no reason for me to have a whole bunch of these review notifications coming into me. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off. Normally, you would never turn this off. Well, at least you would never turn it off if you wanted your participants to receive an email that opens the form in task context. I'm going to be turning it off because I don't want to receive emails at all. But this is one of those never do as I do as I say. And I say, keep that checkbox checked. All right, we're good there. We only have to do one more thing on our parent process. I'm sorry, on our legal approval form. And that is we have to set our options. Now, we are going to want this to work if we just submit the form de novo. So we are going to have to automatically start this process after form is submitted. And just for general purposes, I always do the association as well to associate it with my legal approval timeline. So with this configured, I should now have a fully capable and fully configured legal approval process that I can call from a parent process, or that I can simply run de novo by running my legal approval form. I probably should have set that to horizontal, shouldn't I? Well, it looks ugly. I said I wasn't interested in how it looked, so there we go. It looks ugly. Great. So now I've got this legal approval sub-process. And because I know what data I need to send to it now, that just becomes my rule of thumb on creating a parent process, knowing I got to have the request info, request number, the submit date, and submitter that I can pass to my child process when I call it. So let's go into our main folder and let's build our main form. And let's talk about this. So I know I need the 4 fields that I have to send to the sub process. But remember, I need a 5th field that will store the already set replication field of legal comments back to my main form. So in order for all this to work correctly, I have to have these 5 fields on my main form. I have to be very careful here The names that we use for these fields have to be exactly the same across all the forms. I've got submitter, submit. Now, see, did I put submission date or did I put submit date? I don't know. I'm going to have to be real sure of what those field names are. I think it was submit date, but I've got to ensure that they are because the field names have to be exactly the same. Now, if we wanted to replicate more fields, we certainly could. This is just a demo, so we're kind of doing the minimum necessary to make it all work. There's no real limit to the number of replication fields that you can create, other than, as a practical matter, the most you could replicate is the total number of fields that exist on both your main form and your subforms. But these are the 5 that we need to work. We're just going to have to be really, really sure that we match field names exactly, or it's not going to work. So we've already got our 4 fields that we need to send. So now we're going to have to wire in the sub process to the main process. So we're not here yet because this is not the main process. So this is our next slide. So let's go back and let's build our form. Actually, I could sort of cheat here and just export and re-import the form, which would take less time. But I think it would also be confusing. So we're just going to build our main form from scratch. Let's just do the hard work and do it. So I am in the main process folder right now, which is where we're going to create our main form definition. And we will call this our main form. And, I am just going to go ahead and get out of there. And I'm going to go ahead and create my process timeline as well. And I'm just going to call it the main timeline. And since we're here, we'll just go ahead and we will hook up the form for timeline as the main form. And, oh, wait a second. We don't have a default email template, so it doesn't matter. So we'll just get that hooked up to the main form from our main timeline. And then we'll go back to our main form and we'll set up the main timeline as our main timeline that's associated with this form. We'll go ahead and update. Now we've got our form and timeline linked. And so now let's go in and begin configuring our form. So we need those fields. So I'm going to go back to the legal approval form. I'm going to go back and request info, request number, submit date, and submitter. Okay, that's super important. Oh, also legal comments. Those are the 5 fields I need. Maybe what I should do is just take a screenshot of this so that I don't mess up the fields on the other form, because this is where it gets really important because of the way field application works. So I am going to turn on Madcap Capture, if it will ever load. Of course, it usually loads in seconds. Today, it's got to take 5 minutes while we're doing live TV. But here we go. We are going to grab just these field names right here. And we'll save that. And now I can go back to my main form. Go back to the design view. And I can create my fields. So on our main form, boy, I should have put a title on the legal form. I didn't. Well, I'll do it here. Main form, heading 1, great. And now we'll add our fields. So we have our submitter. And that will be a user picker. And we will call it submitter. Now, this is one of the 4 fields that we're going to replicate to our legal approval process when we call it. So we're going to need to go to field properties here, and we're going to need to check the synchronize field within process. This is the first of the 4 fields that we are going to need to synchronize. So I've got my submitter, and now we'll do our submit date. And that will be a date picker field, which will also, we got to call this submit date, And we're also going to set this as a, oops, don't know what I did there. Submit date, we'll have to call it again. Thank you, save our name, go to field properties, and synchronize our field. Let's make our life easier. It just occurred to me, I don't want to I was about to say figure this out. I don't want to fill all of these fields out. So what we're going to do is we're going to set their default values. So we're going to set this one's default value to form submit date. We're going to go back up to our submit user, our submitter, and we are going to set that default value to form submit user. Thank you very much. And did I set this to replicate? I did, so that will synchronize the field within process. So now I need my request number, and it is fully typed out, request number. Well, that's the label, not the field name. But I will copy it. That's just a text box that we are just going to call request number. And we're also going to replicate this field. So we'll synchronize the field, and we will set, do I have sequence number in here as a fixed? No. Okay, fine. We will just go with string, and I am going to just set this as a sequence number. When the form opens, did I use curly braces? Yes, I did. So that will just automatically set this as a sequence number as soon as the form opens. I don't care that it'll burn the sequence number. And then I've got my request info. So request info, which will be a text box called request info. And once again, let's just do 40 and 5. Go to our field properties, synchronize field within process. And you know what? I'm going to default value this one too. So we'll go with string, and we will set the default value as request number request number is a tricky legal issue. And I misspelled request number. Hard to believe that I've typed thousands of pages of process director documentation, isn't it? Oh, did I set this to be replicated? Field properties, synchronize field within process. I did indeed set it. So now I have the 4 that I'm going to send back or send down to my legal request form. And then now we will go with legal comments. And this will be the destination field for the legal comments in my parent or in my legal process form. So we're going to have legal comments, and we'll drop that in there. Once again, we'll do this as 40 and 5. Oh, we have to name it. And the name is legal comments. And it won't have a value, and we might not even show it unless this goes through legal review. Keep clicking out of it. So there's nothing we really need to do here on the field properties. I certainly don't want to click synchronize field within process because I've already got a form field that is synchronized. That is my source field. So I never want to click this for any field that will be used as the destination field. So basically I've got two-way replication going on, or I will have two-way replication going on, one from main to legal and then one from legal to main. So these are the 5 fields that I need. So we're going to save and close the form. So we'll give it a second to save. And we'll hit OK here. And we should be good to go for our form. So now let's discuss the process timeline that we're going to need to make this thing work. So we've got our legal approval form already ready. So here's what we're going to have to do on our process timeline. All of our other activities, we don't really care where they go. There are only 2 activities that we're going to have to put into the process timeline, wherever it is we decide to slot them in, and they have to go in a specific order. We're going to need a form actions activity. And what we're going to do with that form actions activity is we are just going to add the legal approval of form to the main process. We're not going to set it as the default or anything like that. We're just having process director quickly spin up a copy of the legal approval form. The reason that we're doing that is that we want this form created in this process so that we ensure that our fields that are replicating from the main form get replicated to our subform, which is our legal approval form. I am doing this because it takes no time. It really has no overhead that I really have to worry about. And because I want to ensure that the replication occurs before I call the sub process. I want a completed form before I go down to my sub form. I could make this work in the sub form itself. I'm not. And the reason that I'm not is because what I want to happen is for that subform to operate completely independently. And if I want it to operate completely independently, which means I can just go in and just start it de novo by opening up the legal form and submitting it, because I want it to be a real process that people can really use, in addition to being a sub-process I can call from any other process. So it's got to do 2 jobs. So I'm going to let it do its job as the legal approval form in the legal process. So all of the other dancing and spinning and gyrating that I have to do, I'm going to do in my main process to call it. Now, this is not that big of a deal, adding the legal approval form, because all I got to do is call form actions and say, add the legal approval form. It adds no overhead to the system. It's not like running a 10,000 row KView. So it is largely costless for me to be able to do this in my main activity now, or my main timeline. Now, as soon as I do that, then I want to go ahead and call the legal approval process. So I am going to have to invoke a process activity that calls the legal approval process. And if I do it via the process activity, then what that means is the sub-process, the legal approval process, is going to run synchronously with my main process, which is to say that my main process is going to stop and it's going to wait until legal approval is done before it continues on. So this is essentially, the process activity is essentially a wait task that waits for the sub-process to get done before it completes. So I note down here that unique approvals so I can have flexible placement for my other activities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a quick user activity before we add the legal approval form and call the legal approval process. And then I'm going to have an activity that I'll run after the legal approval process so that we can watch it run through all of those processes. And I'm doing that for a reason. And if I don't do this now, I will forget about it. But I'm probably going to want to track this. And so I was going to come back later and discuss this. Let's discuss this now so I just don't forget about it. Let's go back to my main form. I'm going to go ahead here at the bottom and add my button area. And then below that, I'm going to add my routing slip. Now, in my routing slip, because of the way I'm going to call this, I have some options to what I want to show. So now the control properties is going to be super important for my routing slip. By default, there is a property called show subprocesses. And I'm going to want that checked because on my main form, as people open up my main form to check on how things are going, I want to include that legal process as part of my sub process. I say I'm going to want to do that. You may not actually want to do that. You may just want your users to see what's going on in the main process. So you can uncheck this. I just need to tell you that by default, your routing slip will show what's going on in the sub process, but you can turn it off. So if I forget later to turn it off and show you what the routing slip looks like with it turned off, at least I've told you now that that is possible, and you can see it on your own system if it slips my mind. But I needed to cover that now because once I get rolling here on the next bit, I might forget to come back and take a look at that when we're running the process. All right, back to our timeline. So as I said, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to need 4 activities. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and all these activities are going to be dependent on each other. So we'll just set our dependencies real quick by dragging and dropping. Okay, as I said, we're going to take the first activity and we're going to call this main approval 1. So this is just going to be a user activity that runs whenever the form is submitted. And we'll pretend this is my first level of approval. But now we're going to go and set up the call for our sub process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up activity 2 here. I'm going to rename it, add legal form. Well, I have hit caps lock, add legal form. And I'm certainly going to want to turn, oh, that won't matter because it won't notify me of anything when I change this to a form actions activity. And on my form options, all I need to do is add my legal approval form. Don't need to set it as the default instance. It won't exist in this timeline, so it'll just automatically add it. Although, if the form doesn't exist, which it won't, it will add it. If it did exist, it wouldn't add it. So this is not going to hurt anything. We only will have one form when we reach here, and that is our main approval form. So this will just add our legal approval form. And that's all we need to do for that. It's a costless activity, more or less. And then in activity 3, this is where we are actually going to run our activity. So we're going to call this legal approval. And we are going to set the activity type to process. Then we'll go to process and we will select our legal activity, or our legal approval timeline is the process to start when the activity begins. There's also another little wrinkle here that we need to talk about. Oh, by the way, copy objects from the sub process to this timeline. Yes, copy everything in the sub process back to the top, copy objects in this timeline package to the child process. Yes, we want to keep both of those checked. That's the default behavior. We kind of depend on that default behavior, so we want to keep that default behavior. That's a parenthetical. Back to the main point I wanted to talk about. We're going to start the process. Remember, when we invoke a process, most of the time, let me back up. Most of the time, we kick off a process by submitting the form. That's not what we're doing this time. We're invoking the process by itself. The form's existence and its usage in that process is now going to have to be specified. That's why we have that set form data running when the process starts. It doesn't matter if I submit the legal approval form independently as an independent process. It's not necessary that skip will simply be stepped. That skip will be stepped. That step will be skipped because there's already a copy of the legal approval form attached to the timeline because we submitted the legal approval form to kick off the legal approval process. Now we're doing the exact opposite. We're kicking off the process, but we don't want the process to create our new legal approval form. So that's why we're creating it here with the replication already done, so we can pass it back to the legal approval process. When that process starts, first of all, it'll make the attachments. Then it will invoke the process instance. And when it does, the legal approval form will have already been passed down from the parent to the child. So it will just know that I have these two forms, which of these two forms need to be the default form, and it will pick the legal approval form. And the legal approval form will be set up as our main form for our legal approval process. I did process legal approval timeline. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Just ensuring that I did the right stuff. And then finally, we're going to have activity 4 down here, which we're going to keep as a user activity. And we'll just call this final. Oh, wait, we called the other one main approval 1, right? We'll just call this main approval 2. And who knows how many approvals there are in the main timeline. It could have 30 or 40 activities. We don't care. At minimum, we just need these 4 activities so that we can demonstrate how it works. We are hooked up to our main form here, and I believe we did the same thing on our form. So now I have a running main and child form. So I believe that we have done everything that we need to get our main form set up. Okay, so this is the sort of the penultimate bit. Everything should now be configured, at least for this first run through of the process. So let's see what happens. We're going to run in my main form. Now here is where we test my configuration to see if it works. And if it's an utter failure, we can always go back to the actual one that I know works because I have a completed process. Oh, and by the way, if you want a completed sample of this, just give me an email and I'll export this and I'll attach it to your email in my reply, and you can import it into your system and see it work. So let's run our main form. So we're doing everything from new. We are filling out our main form, which fortunately, because I've made everything automated, I don't have to fill out any of the fields. So I am the initial submitter, and I am going to go ahead and submit my form. Now, the very first activity is main activity 1. You know what? I want to make a change. I want us to know where we are in these forms. And right now we don't. I'm not really guessing. I can see it down here in main approval 1. I think it would be useful to have the process timeline activity, whichever one is running there. So let me go back into the form, and I'm going to go ahead and make some quick edits. I'm just going to run up here to the top, and I'm going to add in activity running name as a system variable. And I don't need a system variable control. You can add it right to the text of the page. So we will let this save and we'll hit OK. And I'm also going to go down here to my legal approval form and do the same thing. So, there's a couple things I didn't do here. First thing, legal approval form. I wanted to add that. So let me do so. I don't know why I'm rushing now. I'm looking at the clock. We're doing just fine on time. I can relax and slow down and talk slower, and hopefully that'll be a little more pleasant for everybody. So we're going to have activity running name on here as well. And I will save and close that form. There we go. Now we can come back to our running form, and I am just going to refresh it. And there we go. At the very top, we can see that we are now in the activity called Main Approval 1. One of the nice things about being able to change a form definition on the fly is that the next time the form displays or when you refresh it, it tells you exactly where you are. All right, so I need to complete my activity. So what I expect to happen, assuming that I have configured all this correctly from the jump, it will now add, when I hit complete, it will add my legal approval form. My replication will occur. Then it will invoke the legal approval activity. I expect this form to go away, and I expect to have to switch workspaces over to my user workspace so that I can see that a task has been assigned to me in the legal approval form to do the paralegal work. So I'm going to hit complete. And there goes my form. So we're going to switch our workspaces back over to user profile. And I have a legal approval form that was submitted right now. I'm in the paralegal check activity. So I can now click on this to open the form in task context. So now I am running in the paralegal check. Well, as the paralegal, I have one thing that I got to do. I got to figure out what type of legal review this particular request needs. Note that the submitter is here. Submit date, request number, the request info, everything I need to make my decision as a lawyer and to figure out what's going on is all right here. So as a paralegal, all I have to do is be able to read this information and set my legal review type and then hit complete. All right, so this is a regulatory deal. So as you can see, we are now in the regulatory review activity. So contracts and legal review were not necessary here. So now I am the regulatory lawyer and I look at what the federal and state government say that we have to do. And so then I can go here and say, nah, we're good. Feds don't care. So we're in the clear. And I've done my legal review here. And I should probably uncapitalize that W because I hate submitting things with typos. And I will complete my regulatory review. Once that is done, we now go to our last activity that we configured, which is our general counsel sign off. And for our general counsel sign off, I'm going to look at it. Do I agree that the feds don't care? Yeah, I agree. And so I am going to go ahead and complete. Now, I want you to notice something because once I click this, we're done and it'll all disappear. So I better talk about it now. Look at my routing slip. It knows that I'm in a sub process. So it is tracking both what's going on in my parent process, because that's main approval 1, which happened before we invoked this. And then it went to my paralegal check, regulatory review, general counsel sign off. I would show you the main approval 2, but we're not going to see that because when we hit complete, that's all going to be done. And now we're back to our main form. Before this refreshes, over on the running processes knowledge view right here, legal approval, this gets confusing, but there are two things running. It's confusing now because I'm back. It hasn't refreshed. I've got my main process that is going, and I've got my sub process that is going. So there were two processes running at the same time. When I refresh it, it still shows two processes. Oh, not sure why it's showing the two processes running, because the second one should have completed. So I am back here, general counsel sign off. So everything happened the way that I wanted. I'm at main approval here, so I can go ahead. Oh, and look, now we're good. The feds don't care. That got replicated back to my main document. So now I'm going to hit complete. That ends my task, and that ends the two processes. My main and sub process are now both gone. I have no tasks. So that is the formal way of setting up a callable sub process. Now, the cool thing is that if I go to legal here now, I don't care about a main process. I am just going to run my legal approval form. Now, when I do that, the form comes up blank, obviously, because there is nothing to replicate into this form. So I'm going to have to, well, because I didn't set up any defaults, I'm going to have to do all of this manually. So I'm going to have to fill out this form, request number, there we go, and a lot of legal requests, and request info. Is this cool? Legally, I mean, typos, I'm going to pretend they don't exist. And I probably wouldn't see this as the initial submitter, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask for legal, because as the initial submitter, I probably don't know what that means, but that's okay. I have a paralegal to check, and the paralegal can check and say, no, 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 it's not some generic legal matter. This is a specific contract matter. So I need to send it over to our contracts guy, and I will go ahead and complete my activity. The contracts guy that says, yeah, cool. And I really should turn caps lock off, and he will complete his review. General counsel now sees it. General counsel pretty happy with this. Notice when we look down at our routing slip at the bottom, there is no parent activity that's happening. So I'm not tracking any parent process or anything. Everything is encapsulated in this process. As the general counsel, I'm going to go ahead and complete my review. And now we're done. We have a completed legal review. So I have this cool little process that is already set up so that I can run it all by itself as an independent process, or I can run it from a main process and call it as a sub process. And it doesn't matter how I do it, because thanks to field replication and the form actions activities, I can just make all of this stuff work right out of the box. This is the full formal way I would do it. There's also an informal way that we can go about it. So I have my main process up here, and what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and copy my main process. I'm not going to copy the timeline, but I will copy my main process form. So I'm going to take this form, and I'm going to copy it. I'm not even going to export it. I'm going to copy that main form, and I'm going to go down here to informal, and I'm going to copy it to here. So I'm going to use the same main form, but my timeline is going to be slightly different here. So I've got main TL. I'm going to have to fix that. But I am going to use the exact same form fields, and we're going to do kind of the same thing. But now we're going to run this informally. Now, if you're going to run it informally, you can. but there are going to be some constraints on what we have to do here. So far, we've talked about having a formal sub-process. That's a standalone sub-process that I can call from anywhere, or I can call individually. There is a quick and dirty way to call a sub-process, but it will not be its own independent process. You won't be able to invoke it. But there is a quick and dirty way to throw something together like this. It doesn't require that we deal with field replication or anything else. However, it does require that all of the information we need has to go on the main form. So in that particular case, before I get to my legal comments on this form, I have got to add that review type. So this is going to make your job of form design a little harder. And the reason is because now I don't have a subform that just has all the lawyer stuff on it, that I can just replicate the stuff from the main form to that lawyer form, and now the lawyers deal with their own form. That's cool, but I can't do that now, because what I'm going to do is something a little quicker and doesn't require that I do the form actions custom task or anything like that. I'm just going to call the sub process and just let it take my main form as its form. And you can do that and it'll work quite easily. But to make it happen, we've got to change our configuration up a little bit. One of the things that we need is our review type. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this form. What I should have done is, no, what I should have done is copied the legal approval form. I didn't. So now I regret that. But I am going to go ahead and copy that control and go back down here. And hopefully it will just let me paste that control right in my second form. And I have my review type here. So now I have all of the fields on my main form. To make this work in the quick, easy way, this is what you're going to have to do. So everything that any user could possibly do all has to be part of our main form. So that means that you may have to show and hide things. It does make your form design and determining what you're going to show to different users at different times, it does make it a little more complex. However, we have our main form now, and we are just going to save and close it because now it has everything we need to do a legal review. There we go. We're saving and closing that. And I am just going to copy both my main timeline and my legal review timeline here. And, well, what time is it? It's 11:22. Yeah, let's just build it from scratch. I think we have plenty of time here. So for my main timeline, we'll just create a new timeline. Process timeline, where are you? There you are. And we're just going to call this the main TL informal. And we're going to do something similar here that we did to the other one. We are going to set the form for timeline as our main form there. And this time we're only going to create 3 activities. So we will have activity 1, which will be our main approval 1. I'll close that. And activity 2, we will make dependent on. And activity 2 is going to be our call legal. And I'm going to set this to a process activity once again. And the process we are going to start off is, well, we don't have it. It doesn't exist yet. So we're not going to be able to configure this yet. We're going to have to come back to this. And then we will have activity 3 See, there's a reason why you build your sub process first. And we're just going to call this main approval 2. So we're going to have to come back and reconfigure this here. Just notice there is no set form, or there's no form actions custom task here. We are just going to call legal. When we do that, our main form is automatically going to be sent down to our legal approval activity. So our legal approval timeline. And what we're going to do is do something a little bit simpler down here. Oh, hit OK. Please save my changes. So we're going to come down into our legal. And the first thing we're going to do is not make a form. We are just going to create a process timeline and nothing else. So we're just going to call this informal legal TL. Okay. Informal legal TL. Informal. Okay. Informal legal TL. And we'll hit OK. The next thing we will do is not set a form for timeline. I'm just going to leave it blank. We don't know what the form is going to be, because what we're going to do is we're just going to call this timeline. My parent form is just going to be sent down to it, and it's just going to be the form for the timeline because it will be the form that is attached to this timeline. It's easier to call the sub process this way, but as we've seen, it imposes a bigger burden on you in terms of form design. Because now whatever I'm going to use to call this sub process, if it requires its own fields, they're all going to have to go on the main form. You can call a sub process really fast this way. You just need to be sure that your forms are configured properly for it. So far, we have covered 2 things that we're not going to do. Let's talk about something we are going to do. We are going to create our activities. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did last time. Well, we're not going to do exactly the same thing as we did last time. I'm not going to create an approval loop, but I am going to create a parent for all of my 3 different activity types that might run. So once again, we are going to have paralegal check or review or whatever that was. And our paralegal is going to need to determine what activities come next. So what we're going to do is we're going to create custom approvals parent activity, and we are going to set this as a parent activity. We're not going to set it up as a loop. We're just going to set it up as a parent. And under that, well, first of all, we are going to, well, I didn't want to do that. We are going to want to drag it so that that parent activity is dependent on, I moved it. Why did I move it? Well, I thought I did the depends on. Okay, let's try her again. Oh, that moves it under another parent. Where's my depends on? Right there. Oh, I'm dragging the wrong icon. Okay, there we go. Now our parent activity is dependent. And in our parent activity, I will create 1, 2, and 3 child activities. So in our custom approvals, we're going to have contracts, oh, this is going to be a lot harder because I'm doing, okay. There's a reason why I did the informal differently. Here's why. Here's another problem we're going to run into. I currently have these activities that are dependent on a value in a form field. My problem is that I don't know what that form field is. So when I set these up, I'm going to have to use some trickery to try to make this happen. I'm going to need to ensure that my review type field is always used with that name and with those three options. So just as I copied that review type field from my legal review to my other form so that the configuration was exactly the same, that's going to be super important when we get to these three activities. Because remember, we've got contracts, regulatory, and legal. So whenever I set this up, this is still cool, but oh, I am going to need, they're all going to run in parallel. So that's fine. All I need to go is the needed when tab. Now, what I am not going to be able to do is choose the default, which is form field, for my form field because I don't have a form field. There is no form associated with this. In fact, I don't know what form is going to be associated with this. So I'm going to have to set a different value here. And what we're going to have to use is, I think it's review type is the name of the field. I'm going to need to use the form field system variable for the review type field. Now, as long as there is a review type field on the form that is going to be attached to this timeline, I can call it via system variable. In fact, you may know of a similar thing that we can do in knowledge views, where I can just use a system variable as a knowledge view column data. And if I return 5, it'll allow me to do a couple of things. I can have 5 different forms that get returned with a review type field. And each one of those forms, it will show me the value of that field. You often, in fact, have to do this in a knowledge view when you are returning multiple form instances. Most of the time when you create a knowledge view, you return one form instance and the form fields on that form are there. But if I'm going to return multiple form instances, I can't do that. I've got to use the system variable. So we're going to do something similar here. We are just going to call the review type system variable, which should return the value of the review type field. I have a review type field on my parent form, so I should be fine. So I picked review type and as a string, and I need to set this to string because it's got to equal C for contracts. And I've also got to copy this to make my configuration a little bit easier. So there we go. Review type equals C. We're good for that one. Now we will go to regulatory, or regulatory, as our British friends tend to say. And we'll add a condition here. Once again, we will go with string, and we'll paste in our system variable. And on this side, we will also go with string. And this is regulatory. So we will say R is our value. And then finally, legal. Legal. And we'll once again set this to string, paste, and string. And this will be L. And now we should be good to go for our 3 types of activities. Now I've put them inside this parent so that when I create my last activity, which will be my general counsel sign off, all I have to do is make it dependent on my parent activity. Parent activities end automatically when all of the child activities end. So, one of the nice things about parent activities, even if you're not going to do looping, is to have a situation like this where I've got conditional execution based on some value in the form. I don't actually know what's going to run, but only one thing is going to run. It's all going to run in parallel. And I want to be sure that whatever runs, all three of these activities are done before I call my general counsel sign off. So if I use a parent, then the parent will simply run as long as any child activities are running. And then once they stop, it ends automatically. So rather than having to do like I did previously with the way that I configured the timeline, where I had to add 3 different dependencies to ensure that general counsel sign off didn't run until all 3 of these activities are done, having a parent activity allows me to accomplish the same thing, but with a single dependency, because I only have to make the dependency on the parent activity. This is one of the cool things about parent activities that go beyond looping, is your ability to organize your timeline and your ability to make subsequent activities dependent on just the parent. That way you don't have to worry about what activities exist inside the parent. You don't have to worry about what happens if I have to add or remove activities from inside the parent folder. It doesn't matter, because you are only looking at the parent for your dependency. So whatever happens in the parent, you're not going to run until the parent is over. And the parent is going to end automatically when all of its child activities are done. So this does make configuration of the timeline a little more logical. And it also is less of an ongoing burden, because if I have to come back here and add 2 or 3 more different types of legal approval, I don't want to have to go down to, and I have to remember to go down to my general counsel sign off and to add those extra activities in as dependencies. So parent activity types do make your life easier. There we go. We've got our general counsel sign off. So we are done with our child activity. Again, no form for timeline is set. So the way that we are going to do this, now that we have our child activity, which again has no form, it's just a timeline. Now that means that I'm never going to be able to run this as an independent activity. It is always going to be a sub process. And look, that might be fine. That's an option that's available to you. You might not need it to live as a standalone process. So instead, doing it this way enables me to go into my process, and I'm going to close the options there. I'm going to go back to my call legal, and I am going to set the process to this to be my legal, informal legal TL, and I'm going to kick that off. Now remember, I'm going to copy all my parent objects down to that timeline and vice versa. So everything is going to run fine here. Now, I do have to make a change to my form, because now that I have my main TL informal, I do need to go back to my main form, which is still linked to my original main timeline. And I need to reset those links to the current one. So we'll go down here to main, and we want main TL informal for both of these properties, so that my form is properly set up. So I will hit OK and save that. Now I can run my form. By the way, I do have activity running there. Okay, I do have it set. Great. So now in our main form, this is the only form that we have. We're going to go ahead and run it. It's going to fill out all of my stuff. But remember, I have to do all of my legal stuff on this form as well. Uh, going to be somebody is going to have to check that. Again, it could be the paralegal, and I might hide this until I'm in the paralegal activity, but everything has to be done on this form. So, as the submitter, I'm going to submit the form. I probably shouldn't have picked legal yet, but I did, and it doesn't really matter. It'll work just the same. So here I am. I'm in main approval one. So I'm going to complete main approval one. That should throw me right into my sub process. So now we're going to go back to our user profile again. There we are. Paralegal check is the activity that is running. So when I open this up, I'm still in my main form, but I'm now in the paralegal check activity. So I'm in my sub process. I will set this for legal. I will complete the paralegal check. It should take me to my legal approval activity. It does. I can make my legal comments. There we go. We have a very negative opinion about this proposal. So we're going to complete that. It will go to the general counsel at this point. So we're in the general counsel sign off, and the general counsel sign off. Once it is done, he will complete that. My form will again disappear. And now I am back on my main form. I am in the main approval two task. So I will open this up. And as you can see, I'm in main approval. I have tracked my paralegal and legal and general counsel sign off all on the same form. And now I can go ahead and complete my process by clicking the complete button. So the second way is, as you can tell, because it took me about 20 minutes to basically build it from scratch, the second way is a lot easier as far as building the processes. You just have to be sure that your forms have all of the right stuff on them in order to call that sub process. But now I've just got this secondary informal legal timeline that is just sort of sitting there, and it can, again, it can be called by any process. And the reason it can be called by any process is because there's no form for timeline. What we are going to do whenever this thing gets called is we're just going to pass the main form instance down to it. It will be the only form instance that is assigned or that is attached to this timeline instance. And so it's going to use whatever form we send it as the main form. There's just some trickiness to doing it that way because, as we saw, if I have some sort of conditional activity that's based on a form field value, I can no longer access a form field directly. I can only access form field values through form field system variables, which means that all of my parent forms all have to replicate this same information over and over and over. It's not as much of a pain as having to replicate it for both the form and the process timeline activities on every main form and process timeline. But it still adds some additional burden to your form because you have to do two things. One, you have to have all of the proper fields on the form. And secondly, if you're going to be doing this sort of conditional execution of your timeline, you're going to have to be sure that those form fields always have the same name. But it's an option that's available to you if all you really care about is just calling the process. But you've always been able to do that, and it's always worked. That is not the primary reason for having a callable subprocess. The primary reason for a callable subprocess at the end of the day is so that you can do this and work with that process as if it was a main parent process. And so the informal thing works, and it's always been something you can do. I mean, you're just calling a sub process at that point. But this is the cool way of doing it because now you can call a secondary process that still has its own rich, full, and independent life. So when you have it set up this way, you can call it from anywhere. So every process that you have can call the sub processes. If they need legal approval, they just call the legal approval process. That one sub process serves all of your parent processes. So you just have to be sure that you have your forms matched, that you figure out which are your inbound and which are your outbound fields on each form that are being served by replication, so that you can pick to replicate the right fields on the parent form and the right fields on the sub-process form, so that they are sent back and forth. You just have to have the form actions. In this, we just have the form actions activity to add the legal approval form before we call the sub process. You're going to want to do the same thing, whatever your sub process is. Just be sure to add that form. You don't have to make it the default form. In fact, you probably don't want to, but you can just add that form. That kicks off the replication, so that when the sub process starts, all of your data is there whenever you kick off the process activity. The other thing is that you can drop this now anywhere you want in your timeline. You can throw in legal approval right in the middle, as I did, right at the end, anywhere you need to. It doesn't matter. And by using the process activity, you stop your parent activity, so it waits for your legal approval to complete before it goes on. Now, you can run it asynchronously, but you'd have to do something different. So what we have seen so far is running this synchronously, which is to say my main process stops. I don't necessarily have to do it that way. I can run it asynchronously. Where's my main timeline? Instead of running a process task, I can, in fact, run a custom task, and for my custom task, I can run the, run process custom task. Now, if I do it this way, I don't even think I need a container form for this. Although if I do it this way, I really don't need replication, because I can do form mapping in here, but I would keep replication in because you don't have to worry about mapping. All I have to do is launch the legal process from here. Building a callable sub process, webinar, formal, main. We'll get to it sooner or later. Main timeline. Oh, I don't want to call the main timeline. That is the wrong timeline. I want to call the legal approval timeline. Okay, great. It's now going to call that legal approval timeline. The big difference in doing it this way is that when I do, my legal approval will now run asynchronously, which means my main process will not stop. It will continue running to the next activity. My legal approval will continue at its own pace, at its own time, while the main process continues. The problem with that is if I need that legal process to be continued or to be finished before my main process finishes, I can't guarantee that if I am running this asynchronously. Then my main process becomes a little more complex. I'd probably have to throw in a wait task, which we don't have time to go into, but I'd probably have to throw in a wait task to wait until my sub process is complete before my parent task moved on. Well, if I've got to do that, why not just run it synchronously anyway? If the end of what happens to my main process is dependent in any way on the legal approval, then I really do want to call the legal approval via the process activity to ensure that my main process stops dead and pauses while the sub process goes through what it needs to go through and completes. On the other hand, if I am just sending it by legal as a courtesy and what they say doesn't matter in terms of the process, I'm just asking, maybe not for advice about this, but just sending them a notification of something that is going on that they will handle offline or separately, then I can call a custom task activity, and I can use the run process custom task. Then I can call the legal thing and it can run however long it needs to run while my main process continues unimpeded. I think in most cases you would not do it this way. And in most cases you would in fact use the process task type so that you call that process and halt your main activity. Most of the time when you're calling a legal approval, whether they say you can do this or not depends on whether your parent process can complete. So it's quite important that you figure which way when you can call the process custom task and when you can call when you can call the process activity to call your sub-process, and when to use the custom task activity type to call the run process custom task to run asynchronously. So just keep that in mind, the difference between synchronous and asynchronous running for your sub-process. But with that, we are done, and I can stop sharing. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I will be looking forward to talking to you. Let's see, yesterday was Wednesday. I was thinking next week was a Spotlight webinar, but I think I am wrong about that. I am wrong about that. So the 7th is actually the first Tuesday of the month. So I guess we'll be back on the 9th, and I will talk to you a week from hence. Have a great weekend, a good week next week. I'll talk to you later. So long.